All right, so we are at the 9:31 time, at least here Pacific time. I'm Morgan, and I'm our host today. I'm our Senior Director of Marketing at Blueboard, and we're so thankful to have everyone joining our webinar today. What an exciting topic. We want to just start quickly by why we're here today. So employee experience and making that authentic. Why is it important? Why are you taking an hour out of your day to join us for this conversation? Ultimately, we find that employee experience is something that is highly correlated to the employee value proposition that employees look for that makes them excited to come to work every day. And there's three components that go into that, whether it's their physical environment, their technological tools and environment, or their cultural. And those all play into the impact that you can have on your employee experience, making them feel more excited to come to work today, making them more engaged, more productive, and ultimately more likely to stay and grow and thrive with your company. So while 2019 is wrapping up, I know open enrollment is going on. Things are crazy for everybody. We're so appreciative to have you join, spending an hour with us for what will be a really lovely, lively conversation with some amazing panelists and hosts. So I'm excited to dive into that in just a moment. So while we're getting ready again, for those of you who are just joining, we'd love to hear from you on the chat. Again, let us know where you're dialing in from. And ultimately, the big question is, what helps you be your most authentic self at work? We'd love to get the conversation started. So like I mentioned, this is going to be a really lively, lovely environment. Consider it you're at home on the couch or maybe at a friend's house as well, just hanging out with friends, having open dialogue. We ultimately want this roundtable discussion to stem from the matters that are most important to you. So please continue to lean on the chat along the way. We'll be actively moderating it and pulling from questions that come through the audience to drive the conversation. We were also so thankful to get so many questions. I believe there were hundreds that came through from the RSVP. You might see some of those questions driving the conversation as well. So big thank you to everyone who shared those. And ultimately, again, share your questions along the way via chat. We're excited to hear what's most important to you. A few housekeeping items before we get going. We wanted to share that, yes, this will be recorded. I'm seeing a few questions come through the chat for that. We'll have the full webinar recap as well as our key learnings and favorite takeaways posted to the Blueboard blog in the next 2 days, and we'll be emailing that to everybody who attends as well. So let me jump in again quickly and walk through a few of our sponsors who are here. Oh, additionally, one other thing, lines will be muted. So if you do have questions, again, that's what the chat is for. We're excited to have that conversation with you. We'll also be offering one PDC for those who are going after their SHRM continued education credits. That will be presented on screen at the end. So please stick around for the full hour to receive the PDC credit. We're excited to have quite a few amazing sponsors joining us today, and I'm going to run actually a really quick poll for you. In the case that any of these sponsors are interesting and people that you would want to reconnect with after the webinar to have a live demo and discussion. Completely optional, just we'll have that running in the background as we introduce our sponsors. So again, I'm Morgan Cheney. I run our marketing team here at Blueboard. And for those of you who aren't familiar, what makes Blueboard special is that we're all about experiential rewards and gifts that can be given to employees when they go above and beyond in the workplace. Instead of that typical cash or gift card, it's all about creating meaningful moments that spread culture because employees are excited to go out and about, cross something off their bucket list, reconnect with friends and family, and then come back to work refreshed and excited to share all of those recognition stories with their teammates. So when we think about authentic employee experience, it's all about that cultural element that we really love and live at Blueboard. So we're so excited to be part of the conversation today, and we were thrilled to see that thousands of people signed up for this webinar because it's a topic that's so near and dear to us all. We're also joined by the team at Sapling. For those of you who are not familiar with Sapling, they're close friends of Blueboard as well, and they're ultimately the people operations platform that manages everything from your onboarding needs to offboarding. They're full-powered HRIS, bringing in a lot of amazing integration partners, and it's really for leaders who care about all things employee experience, retention, and creating an amazing culture. So they're going to take a lot of that work off of your plate, make it a really streamlined employee experience. So the technology piece of that experience, when we think physical, technology and cultural is really Sapling's strong suit. You can learn more about Sapling at their website here, or again, request information via the poll that's running. And last but not least, our lovely friends at Think Human. For those of you who are not familiar with Think Human, they are a leadership development and manager training company who are unleashing leaders' potential to drive positive change in the world. We've known Think Human for a long time. I'm fortunate enough to be doing some coaching with their amazing staff as well. It's been transformational for my personal leadership growth. So we appreciate Think Human and thank them so much for joining the webinar today. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll now. Thank everyone for participating, and I'm super excited to pass it over to our amazing moderator, LaToya. We're going to walk through our speakers. So LaToya Lyn, feel free to take it away. Thanks so much for being here, everyone.
And thank you. Thank you so much, Morgan, for that introduction. And also thank you for all of the participants that are on the call today from all around the world. Welcome to our community and also our private little living room for us to kind of chat, quote unquote, about scaling the an authentic employee experience. So I want to introduce our amazing panelists to join and share their experiences about what this actually means and what it means for them and their experience in that. So I'm going to, and panelists, do a nice wave to our participants when you hear my name, when you hear your name. So first, actually, Jackie was jumping in first. So I want to introduce Jackie Jenkins, Chief Transformational Officer at United Way. So Jackie, do a nice wave to our panelists. Then I'm going to move over to Pamela Do, Learning and Development Manager at Betterment. Thank you so much for being here. And then lastly, I'm going to introduce Kerry von Voris, Chief People Officer at Oscar Health. Wave over to us, Kerry. How you doing? Thank you for being here. So when it comes to, authentic employee experience at scale, this is something that everybody cares about, right? This is something that's super important to why individuals come to work every day, because they want to be able to speak and really see that sense of like feeling that connection in their organization. And there's so many different ways that we can do this. And personally, from my experience, I'm a employee relations, head of employee relations at Compass, and also a senior HR business partner. And my day-to-day really focuses on really understanding the employee experience holistically with an organization. So I want to be able to kind of walk our panelists through, or walk our participants through this experience of understanding that. So the first question that I'm going to jump out here, and like just kind of the headlines right then and there, like, what defines an employee experience? Like, let's really talk through that. And any one of us can kind of jump in and share.
For me, employee experience really has to do ultimately with the perceptions of the employee, how they feel to be a working, contributing, engaged member of the organization. And from the time they join that organization, as they grow and develop within the organization, and even when they leave the organization. That is the sort of life cycle really of the employee. And so for me, how they feel, the perception is really, really important.
Awesome.
For me, employee experience is really engaging employees around like a shared value, a shared mission, and a shared sense of trust and belonging and inclusion. So for a lot of us in companies, usually a company will have a mission, a value, goals that they're all striving for. So creating that shared value, and that can manifest into different practices, different policies, different activities, different initiatives, and really how employees are valued and what their experience is in that, whether it's good or bad, which we'll dig into more a little bit today.
Awesome. That leaves you, Kerry.
I think about I think about the employee life cycle, which I think starts even before an employee joins a company. So it's the reason why they even pick up the phone and talk to the recruiter. It's the reason why they take the interview and then walk through the process of really discerning whether the company is right for them. And then it's throughout the way of reinforcing, hopefully as the values have been aligned, reinforcing throughout that employee life cycle of why they're there. and reminding them. So that's one of the ways that one of the things that resonates for me when I think about the employee experience.
Awesome. So I heard a couple of things. So from Jackie, I hear like, how people feel and the perception of, what that experience looked like from an individual standpoint, which is so important. And then also Pamela shared into the value, and then my favorite word, DIBS, diversity, inclusion, and belonging. Like, how is that mission kind of comes together for people to feel connected to understanding what the experience should be for them. And then also just overarching with Kerry on the employee life cycle, like how does each component, how do we consider each aspect of it, from them even wanting to talk to us or your company to even like how they're treated within the organization. So I think with those points, did I capture that right? Does that make sense? Am I missing anything? Awesome. So I think what the next segue on that is, and Kerry, you kind of touched on that, and if you want to just flesh out a little bit more, the components of it, right? And Pamela and Jackie, feel free to add into that, but I want to kind of get into that since Kerry kind of brought that aspect up.
Sure. I mean, I talked a little bit about, what's the reason someone, takes the call from the company first or even chooses to apply. And I think, I think first it really starts with like who you are as a company, what truly are your values, and then how are you sharing that with the external market too, and how a company's thinking about their talent brand. I love, there was a question about, thinking about the onboarding process, and after the interview stage, you're always reinforcing what your values are and giving a candidate an opportunity to really probe on those values to see if they're true and if they'll align with what they're looking for. And I think the onboarding process, right? It's that day one that an employee walks in and gets to actually see things in action, and that the design of that, I think really sets the tone for things to come. I mean, LaToya, to your point on DIBS, like diversity, inclusion, and belonging, it could not be more important as you are designing the employee experience, because that's something where if you're not being inclusive to your employees, that back door is open and they will certainly leave. And so, being really thoughtful about aligning that to the company's values is super important too. So, and even as someone leaves the company, I mean, I think we all forget about potentially someone leaving the company. And when someone leaves, it doesn't necessarily have to be bad, but you'll have a chance to have an alumni out in the marketplace, talking about your company. And I'll tell you what, like, we're all in a position where we have seen, employees return to the company, and that's just that's a really great thing too. So. Yeah, a few things how I think about it. I don't know, LaToya, did that go deep enough for?
It totally did. And I think what really makes it really interesting is, you touched on the, coming into the organization to leaving. And I think the leaving part of, an authentic employee experience is every recruiter enjoys getting a resume from a top tier company, right? Because it is a type of, how they operate, what they're known for, like a Google or whatever, if you're in tech, or whatever type of, leader, like you always want that resume, but it's really how they're treated within that organization makes them great, even at the end. I know, Jackie, I saw that you were ready to kind of.
Yeah, I think this webinar is on scaling authentic employee experiences. And I think oftentimes when we start to talk about, the components, we start to get into processes and systems and designs. And even as Kerry and I were talking about kind of like the life cycle and the various touch points. But when I think about the employee experience, those are structural elements, design kind of technical aspects of an organization. Organizations to me are nothing more than a group of people who come together around a shared purpose or mission to achieve something. And then they organize and arrange themselves in different ways to do that. And I personally have never chosen a company, or organization, whether I was in a school or a university or a nonprofit or a philanthropy, because they had a beautifully designed experience from beginning to end, or their brand, to Kerry's point, right? Prior to even coming there, like it may have drawn me there, but ultimately they're people in the organization. And so at the end of the day, regardless of how you design that experience, many social theorists and philosophers have reminded us that who you are, your identity, is like a combination of your individual desire and the community, right? So all of your beliefs, values, the culture, the history, you come into an organization and you bring that and you merge that energy with others. And so I think the employee experience really exists somewhere between that process, that those lovely processes that we like to design across the employee life cycle, and us really paying attention to people, their identity, who they are, what is authentic for them, and then bringing that into conversation to be really intentional about the experiences you want everybody to have within the organizational structure.
What I appreciate about that comment, and really just kind of flushes out, like there is the process side that's so important, and the structural aspect of like, this is the common language, this is pretty much, these are the guidelines, but now let's go in deeper, you know, and thank you for bringing that up, Jackie, into like, what is the actual feel of it, right? Because from your original, you know, statement, it's like how people feel and perceive this to be true and what values, and also something that Pamela added in as far as like the mission. So do you want to add a little bit to that, a little bit more, Pamela, to complement that? I think that's a great point.
Yeah, so in going into feeling, I think the one really key important part about this whole conversation we're having is the word authentic. And authentic really just means like being real, genuine, original, unique, and each and every one of us is created uniquely. We all have unique gifts, unique experiences, unique things that give us our identity, which I know we were all talking about. So when you come into an experience like, or coming into a workplace, is that an environment where someone can feel like they can be their authentic selves? Are they bringing their real selves? Are they genuine about that? And even for on the company side, like when we do put in these processes and these programs, is it authentic? Like some programs might be putting in a program because it's the new trend out there. But if it doesn't feel authentic, if it doesn't feel real, then people sense that too, like they sense what's fake. So being able to create an environment where people will really be able to bring themselves. And adding on to just that story for me, like I came into Betterment with zero intention to be at Betterment. I was only supposed to be there for a temp position for 4 weeks, and I was trying to find something in the nonprofit education field. But what really kept me was the experience, was the people, was the fact that everyone was unique, everyone was diverse, and the company really embraced that and really valued that. And that was just seen from everything from just interactions with people to the way that leadership really communicated and built relationships with the employees and how they aligned everyone to the mission and vision of the company. So that actually stirred me to stay, and I've been able to learn so much about myself in this new environment where I could feel like I was being myself and be put into a new environment. And I've been here for 3 years now, and I've completely switched my career trajectory and direction in where I want to go. So yeah, I would say I've kind of come from that product of an authentic culture.
Awesome. So go ahead, Jackie.
I was going to say, we started to bring in some more, language around feelings and energy, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's important because what it's really reminding me of is that, the culture of an organization, what you feel when you walk into an organization, sort of those learned, shared behaviors and ways of being and thinking and doing, it's palpable, right? You may not even be able to name it, but you really can feel it. And a lot of times in organization, it's leaders, the key influencers within the organization, what you hear about the organization even before you get there. In some ways, it's giving you signs, signals, cues, and clues all the time, even when people are unconscious about that, right? And so I think it's very important, and I'm kind of on a personal mission as we enter into the decade, to really try to get people who work in organizations, businesses, whether it's nonprofit, it really doesn't matter, for-profit, to really go back to a form of emotional intelligence and listening to what you feel in your body and in your gut about the place where you work, the group that you're working with. So for me, when we talk about keeping it real, genuine, authenticity for an employee, I feel like a lot of organizations can give you fun things to do and foosball tables and all of these amazing things to kind of like distract you from like, whoa, where am I? Like, wow, it's beautiful. And the physical design of the place is so amazing. But we feel and experience is about feeling and perception. And so I really just want to bring that conversation to leaders and those who are on the call.
Yeah, and so I'm hearing a couple of things. I'm going to pull in a little what Pamela shared, her personal experience of like just like coming in, and she really felt connected to the aspect of what this actually means from an employee experience standpoint. Like you felt safe enough to say, I actually want to be here and do my best work, right? And then what I'm hearing on your end, Jackie, is, like people really don't care about the foosball table or the beer or, the open floor plan with the lighting. You bring your
Those
dog.
are cute. Those are great. Don't hear me say they're not important, but they're not the thing that make people stay.
Exactly.
That's totally right.
So we have the process, right? And what we're doing here with this conversation is we're helping people unpack that, right? Because we immediately go to the process. The guidelines are important, right? Those are the North Stars. Kerry, from your perspective, how do you make it real? Like, where are like the actual like practical things that you can kind of put down there to actually make it real from your perspective? Anyone else? I don't want to put Kerry on the spot.
No, all good. I mean, I think Jackie and Pamela's points are so great, and it's one of the things that I constantly think about. It's like you can do all of these things, whatever they are, but at the end of the day, if it doesn't feel right or feel different, if that's what you're looking for your employees, they're going to leave, or you're not going to reach your business goals. And so, I mean, some of the things, LaToya, that we at Oscar try to be really thoughtful about is creating this culture of transparency and trust. And, we talked about, having an environment that just feels safe, where you can be yourself. And that's one where, I mean, we have open Slack channels where you can ask any question that you want, open all hands where you can also ask any question that you want and it will be answered. I even think, even though it goes back to a bit of process, but an investment in internal communications is something that has really helped us create just a culture where people can be authentic, because they don't feel, they know that we're being proactive about how we communicate with them. And that doesn't mean putting spin on things, but more so in just being really thoughtful to make sure employees have the information that they need. So those are a few things that I and we think about at Oscar as far as creating a really authentic culture for our teams.
And thank you for that. Can I tease out a little bit, like, so your investment in your internal communication, and you and I talked about this offline.
Yeah.
Those components, right? Because sometimes internal comms, they'll come in and they'll, help, formulate a story where everybody can understand. But like, what's very specific and unique about it with your organization?
I think so internal comms falls under the people function. And so it's part of my team. And so as opposed to someone who I would look at who is just in charge of, of copy and getting communication out, this is really a cultural ambassador of the company. And I look to this person to be the eyes and ears. And so they are spending a lot of time understanding how our employees are doing, spending a lot of times with our employee resource groups to really understand, getting feedback directly when we screw something up, and so we can change it. And whether that's a communication channel that we use where employees aren't getting the information that we need, or we were late to the game on a public announce and our employees didn't hear it in time. So that's how I think about our internal comms function, is much more of a cultural ambassador and like engagement person versus strictly internal comms.
Very cool. So yeah, so it makes a big difference as far as how people typically operationalize with internal comms. Often, usually internal comms would sit in the marketing department, right? So It's also kind of building that relationship with the marketing organization to make sure that they're kind of like looping into the P&C, HR, whatever you want to call it, function, or business function, to make sure that employees feel heard. So I think that we have done a really good job kind of fleshing out like the bones of it. I want to shift the conversation to the employee experience and culture, right? And we want to just kind of see, how does that like work hand in hand? We mentioned it a little bit, and it'll be really good to kind of like share your overall kind of like experience or philosophy, if you will, and then just give some practical antidotes against that. Like, what are the things that you're actually doing that our attendees can really go home and try and practice on their own? So anyway, Pamela, you want to go ahead and start?
Sure. So I think sorry, I can't talk right now. Employee experience, there you go. Employee experience and culture really go hand in hand. It's like employee experience informs culture and the culture informs employee experience. So it does create this like constant cycle. And one of the things for Betterment, one of our company values is building relationships beyond the task. So we really place a lot of value in just building community, in building a place of belonging, in building a place of inclusion, what we had all discussed before. And making sure that people understand that, but that people are part of that. And we really value and want employees to know that their voices are heard, that their voices are important, and that their participation is what makes our company so vibrant and makes it in the end so successful. Because really, if your people aren't thriving and if your people aren't doing their best work, then it's not going to result in any company performance or company outcomes, positive ones in the long run. So that's something that we've really emphasized in our company culture. And the way that it plays out in our employee experience is we provide different opportunities and avenues for people's voices to be heard and for people to interact and build relationships beyond the task. So some little things that we've done on a daily basis is we've actually used this one app called Donut, and it's a Slack bot.
I know.
Yeah. And it's something super simple. All it does is that everyone who's in this Slack channel once a month, or you could actually put whatever cadence you want on the pairings, but the Slack bot will once a month pair people randomly in the channel and open up a private conversation for those people and be like, okay, like this is your donut for the month. During this month, go out and like get to know each other, have coffee, and just build relationships. And the way that we've been able to just structure that is we provide a reimbursement. So everyone gets $5 per person to go out and go on their donut so they can go get coffee or actually get a donut. People have been creative and gotten different things. And then in order to be reimbursed for that $5 in the Slack channel, you have to post a selfie of your donut and then write down what you learned from that person, like introduce them and write down what you've learned. And we found that this simple little Slack bot actually created such a big impact in our culture and in driving the culture of building relationships beyond the task, because especially as our company is growing, it's so hard to get to know everyone, especially as we are becoming more remote and having distributed offices. But it's a way that, like, if you're just on that channel, people are constantly posting and introducing new people to each other, and getting to find things of interest that are outside of your work. So it's like this engineer actually loves cooking and like used to live in, I don't know, India. So getting to learn little nuggets about someone that you don't usually get. And we found that it's had such a profound impact on the culture of the company.
That's awesome. So I'm hearing, first of all, there's some AI happening, right? Using technology in HR, right? We're doing it, people.
Yeah.
The artificial intelligence business, which is great. I love Donut. It's amazing. But one thing that you said that was really cool, and for people to kind of really hear, and I want to reiterate that, is building relationships beyond the tasks. That's amazing, right? It's like, you know, you have to work with someone and connect with them, but how do you build relationships outside of that, cross-functionally, where maybe you end up maybe working together, or you come to work and you're connecting. And I think that definitely can enhance employee experience because you can build similarities with someone where you don't directly work with. Love that. Jackie, I'm going to swing it to you. I know you got a whole lot, so give it to me, girl.
Thank you. You know, I work in smaller organizations that are often more resource constrained. So often we can't necessarily throw money at a problem. People come to the kind of work I do around education, hunger, community work, right? Because they are passionate about social change and the mission, and they want to bring people together and sort of work, build bridges across boundaries and, across difference, and sort of lock arms together to get that work done. And one of the things at United Way that we found to be really, really helpful is bringing people together around things that they really care about. That's sort of a common, things that are very common to the entire organization. So when we get our employee engagement survey, when we get it, it's very important to us. We pay attention to it. We try to keep it to 10 questions, simple and sweet, about the things that matter most to us. But we tabulate it, we share it back, but then we start to, we engage the staff. We're really into people power and making sure as leaders, I'm an executive there, that we're not sitting in a room alone trying to solve all of the problems, right, that came back in the employee engagement survey, that we bring it to the people, that we design kind of facilitated learning experiences for people to kind of dive into the data, to say these are the 4 areas that we think we want to move on to help improve the culture. And we just piloted this program last year that started earlier this year called United for Change, where over half of our organization signed up voluntarily to say, I want to be on a change committee where I'm coached and I'm facilitated to work on this problem around leadership, or this piece around culture or professional development, or operations even, right? So we have 4 different teams. And over the course of 6 months, I've been introducing them to understanding how organizations work, how to become change leaders, how to work more effectively in teams, how to do empathy data, gather empathy data within the organization, so that they can design experiences and sort of prototype and test them out, and ultimately become empowered, right? To say, we all work here together. It's going to become a more authentic workplace because we all, in these learning experiences, get to bring who we are, all aspects of our identity, no matter what culture we come from. Right. We are here at the table, problem solving around the changes we want to make. And it's really sort of improved the employee experience. I see it. Other leaders are naming that, wow, this person who used to be more victim, like, oh, things are happening to me, I have no power to influence, are now really coming into their power. They're stepping up and saying, wait, I have some skills now. I know how to move through a complex environment and influence people as a leader to get them to change. So I think what we're doing is trying to teach people that we all are in the position to be influencers, even if we don't have positional power or authority. And then we're teaching people skills and competencies about how to do that. How do you do that when you don't have all the money and when everybody's overwhelmed and busy and it's really stressful? Yeah. So to us, people power, and really intentionally piloting and designing these experiences where people can raise their hand and say, I want to be the change I want to see in the world. Exactly. And that's been really positive.
Awesome. Very cool. So I'm going to go to you, Kerry, but there's a lot of buzz happening with remote workers.
I've seen it. Yeah.
But I want you, so you can do your thing, and then we can do that, because I want to unpack that and figure out a way to be able to problem solve that. So go ahead, Kerry.
Well, it was actually kind of the direction I was going to go, LaToya, but I don't have to. I mean, it's something that, and listen, this is not like a huge out of the box idea or anything on engagement of remote employees, and it's an expensive thing, but I really think that the old school face-to-face, like, visits to their offices and having them to, if you have a headquarters, is worth the investment, especially at the beginning of their employee experience. I think as their tenure goes on, things seem to flow a little bit more, but that crucial point of building and creating relationships really does help the problem solving. It helps someone who's remote pick up the phone and call one of their colleagues when they're dealing with a question or a problem, versus kind of trying to solve it in a silo and on their own. I mean, we at Oscar, we make the investment twice a year. We have our Directors Plus come in for an offsite, and we switch the offsite direction. The first half of the year is strategy, the second half of the year is culture. And so that's one of the things we do. And in fact, my entire people team, or half of them, because we did it functionally, are in New York now, because that's an investment. I have offices in Dallas, Tempe, and LA. And I'll tell you what, the amount of work that they get done when they're collaborating together, and just the kinds of collegial relationships they're able to really develop is worth the investment.
Kerry, can I just want to say, at United Way, we bring people together across government, nonprofit, and the corporate sector. And a lot of times we have to kind of remind some of our business leaders, right, who are all about the bottom line and profit and operational efficiencies, is that change happens at the speed of relationships or trust. And I see a lot of people in the chat talking about safety, emotional safety, psychological safety, vulnerability. If I don't trust you, I don't care what your title is or how big your organization's budget is. If I don't feel respected, seen, and heard, and you haven't taken the time, to Kerry's point, to build relationship with me, then you're going to wonder as we start to move on and change as to, oh, this person doesn't really respond to me very quickly, or they seem a little standoff. I'm wondering what's that's about, right? And that's where we get back to the psychodynamics of change in these organizations and employee experience, right? Like, if you haven't taken the time to honor and fully see me, who I am and what I feel really bring, then most of what you're trying to accelerate so that you can get to that result or that outcome or that bottom line, I guarantee you it will be delayed. And this is where people are like, why is the change not happening? Well, because you paid attention to the overt things that you can see, but you haven't really paid attention to the things that are kind of beneath the surface about how people are feeling about that experience.
I want to add on to that as well. For us, we're going through this challenge of scaling to remote employees. This year, we just opened up 2 new offices that are in different geographical locations. We've started to hire a lot more remote employees just working from home. And this is just a new challenge for all of us. And kind of going on how we can create that. Yes, like it's so important to create that trust and as much as possible be able to meet in person. But overall, like it's so difficult to do on a daily basis, and getting into what are like the daily habits and daily norms. So that really made us kind of take a step back and look at our daily norms and look at our daily habits and be like, okay, well, does this align with where our company is right now? Like if our value is people feeling respected, people feeling trusted, people feeling a sense of belonging, does this, what we're currently doing, does that make sense in our new environment of being remote, of people being distributed, and do they feel like they belong? Because I think one mistake that we really wanted to make sure we weren't doing was that New York is the headquarters and all the other offices are just kind of on the side and can get forgotten about, or they all have to adapt to what we're doing. But we've kind of flipped it and being like, well, what can we learn from our remote or distributed offices that can kind of change the norm of the company? So one of the things that we've been doing is looking at just meetings, like meetings we attend every single day for hours at times. And what are some practices that we are doing to conduct the physical meeting that can be more inclusive and create a sense of belonging for everyone, including remote folks? So we've adapted this like remote first mindset. So if someone is Zooming in or if someone is tuning in, asking them first if they have any questions, or asking them first if they want to kick off the meeting, or even starting with a short icebreaker so everyone can get to know each other and have an opportunity to talk. Or we saw this one team do it the other day where one person was Zooming in from their team. So they decided that everyone was going to bring their own laptops, have their headphones, and everyone was going to Zoom into the meeting. So even though they were like, most people were in New York headquarters, they decided to just all kind of be on that same level field and create that environment. So it's something we're still continuing to do. We're even like rolling out trainings on effective communication, on how to collaborate as remote teams, and seeing how we can embed that value, and going back to culture, how to now make remote culture dispersed offices a part of our identity and culture as a company.
So I'm seeing a little bit of like how we are really pulling together and making sure, one, I love, remote first culture, like having that mindset, whenever someone is not directly in HQ, that they feel welcome and a sense of belonging. Because, if you think about it, I remember I had an experience where I was rolling out new values for a company that I was working at, and we created all the values, in HQ. We invited people from other offices around the world, but then as we rolled them out and started defining them, we found that the remote organizations or remote teams really weren't that connected. So then I went out to these countries, spoke to these individuals directly, and then I said, okay, the value of, be solutions driven, what does that mean to you in your country, in your language, and everything that is in your local, space? That's how you do it. So shout out to all of the people that are, Zooming in and listening to us from around the world or away from, New York, localizing, your values, your mission, your culture really would enhance the employee experience within your team. So, and I'm hearing a lot of this from everyone, and Kerry's going to jump in, and Jackie, you can go ahead and dovetail into that if you'd like to.
No, LaToya, I really appreciate your example of what you did when you realized something wasn't landing. And also, Pamela, when you talk about learning, right? How it's important to always stay with kind of like an open learning mindset and looking at the data and going, something's off here, and then being courageous enough and engaged enough to go where you needed to go. And so the word that popped into my mind was social location. Like, if all of us always asked ourselves, how am I socially located? Not just geographically around the world, but in terms of my identity, my culture, within a hierarchy, this organization, within a power structure, within a social structure. If we constantly asked ourselves that question and brought some awareness to that, we could often have a lot of empathy with other people, and to realize that what Jackie is bringing to it is very limited, it's unique, it's special, but in order for it to be the best thing that it can possibly be, others are located differently in terms of their identity, in terms of power, in terms of geography. And so I need their voices up front, right? I need to hear from them up front, because that output is not going to be a reflection of the we-ness if I don't hear it up front. Anytime you design from the other way, right, you can get into these troubles like, oh, we are rolling something out that some of us who are very limited with our biases and what we're bringing thought would be the thing. So I think to the extent that we can constantly ask ourselves, who am I? Where do I come from? How am I socially located, right? I think it will help us to create more authentic employee experiences.
Awesome, very cool. Kerry, are you going to say something?
No, I mean, a couple of points that are coming through on the virtual end of things. And LaToya, to your point of actually going out and being face to face, I think it's a really key thing that executives and leaders take the time and are physically present at these offices too. I mean, too often I have seen where they don't do it, and it's not important, and that really reverberates throughout the company. So I just think executives have to take that time for sure.
So I want to take those points and like, how do we now really like give out some practical, aspects of the employee experience, right? So we have the remote employees. We care about them. We want to hear them. We're going to go and visit them. They are the experts within their markets, their regions, to help us understand how to do our best work in their hometown. Now, talk to me about how that can either be negative or positive to the employee experience if we really don't hold. And I know that we were very prescriptive in different ways of saying it, but like, let's define it here. Like, like kind of like weigh it out, pros and cons. Like, we really don't do that well with the employee experience. And anyone can jump on.
Restate it, LaToya, so you just restate the question so I make sure I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, so the question really is how do, like, we talked about all the different aspects of the remote, and we're talking about the employee experience, but like really define it here on like the negative and positive ways we don't do that well. We really are looking after our remote employees.
Oh, like pros and cons, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Like what do, don't do, right?
And LaToya, just for remote, or are we talking about employee experience overall?
Just for remote. Let's do remote. Yeah. Yeah. Do's and don'ts. I like that, Jackie. Do's and don'ts. Okay. Rapid fire. Who wants to go first? Pamela?
I can go ahead. Just because like this is something we're dealing with right now. Is I think don't is for
kind of like going into
just for like any situation in general for just life too, just like don't assume. I think it's so easy to assume that we know what the remote experience is like. We assume like what they want. We assume what the employees are going through or what we think that they need. But that's not always the case. Like, it's so important to be able to just listen and to be able to get to know who your employees are, especially if like maybe right off the bat, you're not able to go visit them in person and build that personal connection, is like really get to know that first and build that foundation of trust and of relationship building, so that you can really truly understand and get to the root of what their challenges are, what they're going through, even finding out like what their motivators are, what motivates them, or what drives them, and really seeing how that you can really bring that and what makes that remote person or remote or distributed office unique to what they are. Because we were talking about like really bringing in people's unique identities. So understanding their identity and understanding what they're bringing into the company, and then being able to, that helps you to really then plan out and think about the employee experience. So don't assume, and do dig deeper, and do create space for conversation and for relationships and for trust to be built.
Awesome.
I would say, do be self-aware, do be empathetic, do ask questions, don't assume. Do put yourself in the, in the shoes of others and imagine what might this be like for them. And if you're coming up with blind spots, ask.
Love.
Yeah, I think one of the first things that I think about is that it's so easy for people who aren't in a remote office or on video. It's easy for the people who are actually all in the room to forget. And so one of the things that I'm particularly vigilant about is like no typing in the background, like laptops down, like no chit chat, because it actually makes our pals in other offices like have a really hard time hearing. And again, that's a tactical thing, but it's a respect thing. And then also acknowledging, sometimes I think I've seen people just kind of really just stay in the room without acknowledging the participants who are on the phone or video. And so I would say, don't type and make noise, and then make sure that you're acknowledging.
Yes, love. So I'm hearing, be aware, acknowledge, also, don't assume. Also make sure that you're respectfully, making sure that acknowledging that someone's actually in the space. I love this. Like, I'm here, all the remote people are like really like probably buzzing, like, yes, that makes sense. We are here. Thank you so much, ladies. So I want to add in another layer to this. And this is something that has been kind of happening, whether we like it or not, but this is the world as it's growing. And as the millennials are now becoming executives, and the Gen Zs are coming right behind. And millennials, I'm millennial, by the way. We've had a bad rap, but we're pretty good. But we're also, pretty understanding and demanding, and we'll work hard and we'll do all these different things. And there's a way that the organization needs to respond to millennials. And then there's a Generation Z that's a little bit different as far as like they have more characteristics of the baby boomers and the generation right before millennials. So from your perspective and understanding, and I would say Gen Zs are more like your entry-level employees at this point. They're like in their early 20s, probably just graduating from college, entering the workforce. And then your millennials are now kind of taking on director, VP positions, things like that. So how do you really understand scaling an authentic, authentic employee experience with those two generations in mind? Any experience with that from the panelists? Or opinions?
I think what's great about those generations that is different from me, I was born in 76, is, so I'm cusping a little bit, is what I love about what's happening in leadership and management conversation is people are explicitly talking about humanity and things like organizational culture. Like, they're talking about it. They're talking about identity, right? And so I think what will be helpful as we try to figure out, how to scale authentic, employee experiences, is to bring people back to real, like, we all took humanities classes in college, you know what I'm saying? And I know we all go into companies or organizations wanting to really focus on our technical skills and our ability, but we really need to start teaching these generations about what does it mean to lead? What is leadership? How does it differ from management? What is followership? What's really required? How do you influence? How do you communicate? How do you give people feedback? How do you stay clear on spirit, who you are, what your values are, what you be about, right? I feel like we're really living in a time where this webinar, I think, is an example of we are explicitly talking about this. I feel like a lot of people come out of college with the technical skills and the know-how, and then they kind of get more on the job training. But I really am seeing a gap in like, how do you bring these sort of social and human values back into the workplace? So that a lot of these questions that people are challenged with, sometimes I'm like, I think I learned that lesson in kindergarten. Let me remind you what it is. You first seek to understand, you ask questions, you say please and thank you. Like there's some real basic things that I think have gotten lost, but what's great is that we now have a language we're talking about it, and I think we need to lean into that as the people who hold these roles, you know, these leadership roles in organizations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. And I think I love how you started about, I know that millennials have a bad rap, but there's so much that we've been able to learn from, why? I don't know. But we have so much that we can learn from these groups of people, from the new workforce, from the new people that are emerging. And one of them, I think you're right, Jackie, in that they're very in tuned with making an impact on their social footprint and their, like the value that they bring, not just to themselves, but to this world and to society. And I think we can really tap into that. And that's what organizations are. We're all here working together. We all have an impact on each other, and in turn have an impact on our communities and our society and world as a whole. So just being able to leverage that and understanding that about our new managers that are millennials is really training for it. It's like, okay, like, what are some skills and competencies that a successful manager needs to be able to embody those values? Like they all have it, and it's all this energy that people have it in them, but how do you direct that energy in a productive way that is going to help others and help the company and help create an authentic environment? So we train on, like you were saying, emotional intelligence. We create structures for these employees as well, because a lot of these millennials are becoming new managers, and this is their first time being in any type of leadership position. So creating certain structures, like having quarterly performance conversations and teaching them how to do that with their reports, and what kind of questions to ask. So I think I mentioned it before, but like asking their reports, like what motivates them, what demotivates them, what are some challenges that they're going through, what are some barriers that are keeping them from bringing their whole selves, or from bringing or being able to really thrive and grow, and really asking those questions to their reports, and allowing them to just talk and to really tell them about themselves and what they're going through, and creating that space for employees to bring themselves, whether like they're going through a rough time. We have a space where you can talk about that and be open about that if you are struggling with something, or if you feel frustrated, then it's okay to bring that up to your manager. So just trying to create that space for dialogue and understanding amongst each other, and creating structures for it.
I want to zoom to Kerry, because I know Kerry got a lot.
Yeah.
Listen, I know millennials get a bad rap, but I'll tell you what, like, they are our leaders today, and they're going to be our leaders tomorrow. And I think we are going to be really hard. Yeah, we're going to be hard pressed to look at the change that they're making to our world that is going to be better because they are so mission and purpose driven. And I think we are going to be hard pressed to say that that's not a good thing, and a really powerful thing. So I get really excited about our workforce today. And like I said, in our leaders tomorrow, what I love about creating a culture and an experience that really fosters how they want to grow is that that these folks, they don't differentiate from their personal life and their work life. So they want to be the same person at work as they are outside of work. And so creating an experience that really allows them the safety and the opportunity to do that is a super fun thing. And then I think it's also really helping, leaders who don't have experience in working with or managing millennials, really helping them develop an understanding and therefore respect of what this workforce is looking for. So those are definitely conversations that we continually have at Oscar. And also, I mean, even on the more practical point, how they collaborate is something that on the employee experience side that I spend some time thinking about, and where they collaborate is often an important element to my teams.
Awesome, very cool. And I think,
sorry, Victoria, go ahead.
And thank you. So I think, what I'm hearing here really is, Kerry, I really appreciate that perspective, because a lot of times we think about like the other generations and kind of like what do they need to do, and just representing, you know, like you're just listening and you're observing and you're responding. And I think that's the best way to support millennials, to help them with an employee experience. Because to be quite honest with you, from a millennial perspective, we've learned everything from our other generations, all the things you guys fought for, believed in, wanted to do, and then we come here and we're like, we want it now. And then we're like, wait, you know, but like, this is what it is. But I really appreciate that aspect. So we're actually wrapping up. This was so good, like really good. We talked about almost everything, and we could have maybe go on for another hour. So before we officially wrap up, I want everyone to kind of just take a moment, and before we end, I want to just have each one of us, like, what's one thing that our attendees can like go home or go to work and like do, just the one thing. And I'm gonna start with, actually, I'm gonna go back to Kerry. If you want to go ahead and just share, what is that one thing that we can make happen?
Oh man, I'm gonna go with listen. Listen to your employee base. A few things that have come up too is just employee engagement surveys and employee surveys, and I would say listen in any way, shape, or form that you can, and use the data to really inform your decisions of creating that authentic and inclusive employee experience.
Awesome. Pamela.
I think stemming off of that is listening, and creating avenues for feedback, because we do want to listen from our employees. We want to listen on and make sure we're doing things for them and by them. So creating like structured avenues for feedback, and being open to that and being ready to change. Like culture and experience is constantly changing and is dependent on the people around you. So making sure that you're constantly having feedback loops and you're constantly creating that space for people to talk about what they want, what they don't want, and then being ready to change and like actually make action towards it. Because if you listen but don't create action, then that can also kind of break down trust and loyalty.
Awesome. Jackie.
You know, there's no one way to create an authentic employee experience. It's what is authentic for you and your mission and where you are. So I would urge everybody who's watching and listening today to, if you want to know more, if you want to learn more, or if you're struggling, seek out help. Get a guide, a Sherpa, a mentor, a coach. Find somebody to help you to figure out, how do you do this? How do you make it better for yourself? How do you make it better for others?
That was all amazing, and thank you all so much. First, I want to thank our attendees for participating and listening in and watching us kind of just like go off on and our ideas. Really appreciate everyone from around the world that attended. I also want to especially thank our panelists. You guys are all my new best friends in my head. I appreciate everything that you said, and you guys are just so insightful and thoughtful and brilliant. And I love what you bring. So thank you so much. And then also to, Morgan, as well, and also Think Human. Thank you for allowing me to moderate. I really appreciate that. So everyone here, go and make a version of this in your own world. All right.
And LaToya, thank you for moderating us and being so engaging. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And thanks to everyone who joined.
Bye.
To do a quick wrap up. Thank you ladies so much. Oh, high five. Yes. Just as we wrap up, thanks everyone who joined. We had over 300 people with us live. What an amazing audience. So again, thank you to Kerry, LaToya, Pamela, everyone who joined, Jackie. We will be sharing this recording. We will be sharing the chat with everyone. I've reposted the SHRM code if anyone needed that. And we have some very exciting news at Blueboard. We're rolling out a brand new website on Friday. So more and more webinars and lovely events to come. So please stay tuned with us. Enjoy the rest of your day or evening, and we will see you next time. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.